Uh, I just want to say welcome everyone to our LA County Library virtual event, Creative Career Paths, Location Scouting and Management. I'm Lyda Truick, a Regional Youth Services Coordinator for LA County Library, and I'll be your host today. Creative Careers Paths is a series exploring careers in the entertainment, film, TV, and media industries. In today's program, director and producer Kimberly Browning will have a conversation with location scout and manager Eduardo Ricketts Jr. Let me introduce Kimberly Browning, who is facilitating our conversation. Kimberly is a filmmaker based in LA and is the founder and festival director of Hollywood Shorts Film Festival, which launched in 1998. She's an associate short film programmer at Tribeca Film Festival and a senior programmer at Catalyst Content Festival. She's been the executive producer of HBO Access since 2015 and is now part of the new Warner Media Access Programs team, developing emerging writers and directors in episodic television. Our guest today, Eduardo Ricketts Jr., is currently scouting locations for ABC Disney on the new series Unprisoned, starring Kerry Washington and Delroy Lindo. He was born and raised in Los Angeles, California, and graduated from Washington State University, where he studied broadcasting and found his passion for creative content. When he returned to Los Angeles, it was for a job in film production. 20 years later, he's scouted locations for major studios, TV, and films in Hollywood and all over the United States. When he's not at work, he enjoys spending time with family. So with that, I will hand it over to Kimberly to start us off. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us today. So excited to talk about one of my favorite creative parts of the process, locations. And my dear friend, Eduardo. Thanks, Ed, for being here today. Eduardo, so let's start at the beginning, which is you're from LA, where'd you go to high school? And what did you think you wanted to be when you grew up? And tell us about how you chose what you studied in college.
Okay. It's a mouthful. I came up in the South Bay of Los Angeles, and my mom, my parents, are from the area, or my mother is. My dad and his family immigrated from Central America, and so for them, education was always a big thing. My mom always tried to make sure that I was in the best schools, even if we weren't located there geographically. So she sent me to Beverly Hills High School. Through a long line of hoops and everything to get there. And so, I always kind of knew that I wanted to do something in the creative arts, just didn't know what. And so it was just kind of, it's always a combination of dumb luck and, just kind of your passion, and then kind of, the steps kind of fall in place. So in high school, I had no real direction. I just played sports and, was kind of an athlete, and just didn't really have any kind of path that I could see. I just knew that I wanted to make movies somehow. So years later, after getting into college and playing sports and getting injured, it was a dad of a good friend of mine in high school, who called me up out of the blue and said, "Hey, I heard that you were laid up in your apartment, with a bum leg and kind of bumming around. Why don't you come to Utah and make a movie with me?" So I got a plane ticket and flew to Salt Lake City and started making, more money than I had ever made as a production assistant. And just, I was making, for $100 a day, to me was a fortune. So I was, that was great. And I people who were from Los Angeles. They were from the Roger Corman production tree, assistant directors, and I fell in line with them, and we did several movies together. I worked as a production assistant probably on 5 or 6 films right there, and then coming right out of college, and had kind of chosen a path to become an AD, an assistant director. And I really enjoyed that. I'd say I probably spent 9 or 10 years before I was firsting, and then working as a first AD, and then doing a lot of low budget features and that kind of thing. But the work wasn't as steady as I needed it to be. With I had a family, girlfriend, and a and a baby to support, so I needed more steady income. And another friend, had said, "Well, listen, why don't you start working with us in the locations department? You can handle it, obviously, if you can AD, and there's going to be a lot more work." Uh, that was my first. That was my first job as a location assistant. I think the film was I can't remember. Oh, Million Dollar Hotel. We shot it downtown Los Angeles, starring Mel
Amazing.
Gibson and Bono. Yeah, and that was 3 months of nights in Skid Row. My first show, and I kind of from just kind of went from there, and I've been doing it ever since.
I think a huge part of our careers, we can all point back to um, mentors and opportunities that we said yes to. And so tell me a little bit about those first location jobs and what were the important things that, especially coming up as ADs are the generals. They are in charge of everything. They know everything about everything. And so what was it about locations that you realized you also had a strength that maybe you hadn't understood about the department as an AD?
So um, I understood early on because of the way that I got my job. Because of the executive producer, my first mentor, Panos Nicolaou, who's no longer with us, God rest
I
him.
love Panos. He was my mentor as well when I started out.
So, I learned early that there were a lot of things that had to happen in order for a movie to be made, and most of them, a lot of them, took place in the office on phone calls and that kind of thing. But a lot of stuff was just you just kind of had to make things happen. So that was the first kind of, I guess I would say, really angle that I saw as as far as working in location. Somebody said to me, "Hey, you would probably be great at this," and I had no idea what they were talking about until I was kind of thrown to the wolves, and then they said, "Hey, we need you to find this," and and it's always the matter of there's an urgency. There's always it's a it's a timetable. It's probably something that maybe some other people haven't been able to find. So I guess I found it challenging. And then I just enjoyed it. I always enjoyed a good scavenger hunt as a kid. So and then there's always the element of a producer told me a long time ago that when you're making it, when you're producing a film, when you're doing finding locations, you are working with expectations, but more importantly, you're working with a budget. So you, as a location scout, must manage expectations right off the bat. In reality, what this person is asking you to show them, and what it's going to cost them. So it's your job to tell them, immediately. Kim knows, that there's nothing more valuable to waste than time. If we're running around looking for something that I know that you can't afford, then I've wasted your time. So the first thing that I have to do is assess my library, or what is it going to cost you, and how can we get it done?
Yeah, it's such a critical part as we start to talk about you discovering that you had such a great strength in this field. Um, I want to talk a little bit. I'm going to put into the chat just the different job titles that you will normally find in a location department. And so as you heard, you guys all heard Eduardo talk about kind of starting out as an assistant location manager, but really the production assistant, no matter what department you end up for locations, one of the feeder jobs is definitely production assistant. And then if you know you like locations, making sure and communicating that on the jobs, making sure and building relationship with the location people on that show or on that short film or on that job that you got, non-union job that you got. So you can try to get assigned to their department to learn. Because I think there's no book, there's no how-to guide for locations. I think the mentorship and finding somebody who's really good at locations is your best pathway to learning how to do this job and exploring your talent at it. And so as we look at, also, I feel, Eduardo, that as you get into it, like you do film and you do television, and we're so lucky to have you here because you can give us both perspectives. I think the world of commercial locations is also its own process. And I think people who do commercials tend to be in a separate group. I'd love to hear more about, as you were doing film and doing TV and getting all these opportunities on the way up, how you landed kind of choosing to do more film and television. I know people that work in commercials work at a different bit of a speed. And the process is a little different. Could you give us some insight about how you figured out which lane you wanted to be in?
Well, for me, it has always been it's very personal, and it has to do with my family, and being able to provide you know for them as the best way that I can. So taking the best jobs, and where as a young person I may have grasped at an opportunity that was at a remote location or something that I really just place that I always just wanted to film. Now it's a matter of working on the show, that has the most episodes, and is located in town, and
Mm-hmm.
and
Lifestyle choices, which I love. I love that there's such a wide bandwidth that people maybe don't even realize in this department. And I'm excited about that. So when did you decide to join the union? I think there is really important for people to know there's a ton of non-union employment, and chances are your first jobs are going to be on non-union shows. And some people choose to stay non-union, and talk about, for you, especially as you were a provider and you wanted to have benefits and all those things that go with that, and the type of jobs you wanted to work on are more union jobs. Can you talk a little bit about that process and what, any tips or benefits to either, things people should think about as they're thinking about this career?
Yes, I can. Just to tell you honestly that the first job that I got as a location assistant, I got to join the union, the Teamsters Union,
That's incredible.
20 years ago. And
Can you
I,
explain to people how that works a little bit? Like if you get hired on a job, that they can qualify you even if you don't have all of the typical lead up and paperwork and hours that you normally, because it happens all the time.
so producers are, that if a producer or a production company finds an individual that they want to get into the union to accept this job, it's their burden to prove that this person is uniquely uniquely qualified for this position. So it's like taking a job as a production assistant or something like that, because you basically know that you're signing up to to do the stuff that no one else either wants to do or can do. So you got to have the right attitude. It's not for the faint of heart in that regard. Now, these union jobs are good jobs, but I was about to tell you was that I actually the job that I got that got me into the union because I was motivated by other stuff. I didn't take the job. I took the job and I worked. I finished the film and then left to assistant direct another film. And it was 5 or 6 years later that I ended up having another opportunity to join the union. And at that time, I jumped on it because my priorities had changed. I had another child. We needed, now I needed those benefits even more. So and then the union opened a lot of those avenues for us.
Mhm.
So I'm grateful that I was able to get back in. um and those things, they're sometimes there are what you call hiring freezes, and sometimes the books are open and they need people to just sign, come in off the street. And recently we had one of those kind of swings in over the last couple of years. So there's a lot of new members in our union, the Brotherhood of Teamsters. Um, so, but working non-union was definitely a key to understanding the job. Being able to get the kind of experience that I wouldn't normally get, working underneath somebody, being somebody who was able to, or required to manage an entire production and the budget. And lucky enough to work in another form of episodic television where I would get 4 or 5 scripts ahead and be able to kind of plot out months in advance with the producers. These are invaluable experiences. So and all of them, every single one of them is something that I'm grateful that I kind of had my antenna up for, and that somebody saw, um you know uh, that it was something that was worth sharing with me.
Yeah. I think one of the things we like to talk about is uh, things might not seem like an opportunity, but every job you can get, you're going to learn something, whether how to do something or how to not do something in terms of your department. And so everything's valuable, especially when you're starting out.
Most definitely, yeah. I mean, why turn down experience, but also money? You know, someone's
Yeah.
willing to pay you to do something, and it's helping you further your goal, yourself to your goal. Um, the people that one of the big things about working in this industry is being able to pick the right employer. Being able to know when you're working with under someone who's going to take care of you, who's going to look after you, who's going to appreciate your effort, because you're willing to, then for those people, the sky's the limit. You do whatever it takes, and that they'll take care of you. And that's kind of how the whole thing works.
So, as a location manager, let's talk a little bit about the job description. And then we'll talk about scouting separately. There's a link we're going to give you guys from Masterclass, which is a fantastic website that has people talking about lots of different parts of the business. And they have a really cool breakdown that we're going to give you the link to, of what a location manager does and a few of the top tips. But I'd love to talk a little bit about the creative process. So first we'll talk about when you first get a script, what you do first, what are those questions you're asking the director in the beginning? And then we will talk about more logistics and film LA and the film commissions and the rules and the law and all that fun stuff. So when you first get a script, what are you looking for? How do you talk a little bit about what breaking down a script means in your department, and how you get ready to have that first conversation with the director?
Okay. We start with the breakdown of the script. Uh, first thing, just like any other thing that you're going to read or ingest details, you want to you make yourself comfortable. And then I open a document on Word, and I basically um, scan the pages of the scripts for the slugs of the locations. So which means that I look for interior mansion in the script, and then I write on my separate document mansion, and then I continue to scan the script, and then I notice that the interior mansion, and there's a bedroom. So now we're opening up bullet points, and I'm listing the details that are going to be necessary in each one of these locations. And we scan the script for each of all the locations, breaking it down to what's things that take place on the road, things that take place on the elevators. All that is detailed in the document, so that now when the director or the producers ask questions about the locations, I can refer back to specifics, and not have to flip through pages of the script. So once that's done, when we know all the locations that are contained in the script, then you start a sort of like a broad search, and you always want to know the most. It's the locations themselves are obviously important, but more importantly are the people, the owners or the managers or the whomever that are going to be the gatekeepers to these locations. So if a location doesn't have any gatekeepers, i.e., it's a friend, belongs to a friend of yours, you always want to be able to bridge that communication relationship gap when you present something. When a producer asks, do you know, or do you have a car dealership that we can film at? Well, of course, there's dozens of car dealerships in the Los Angeles area, but which ones of them can I call them up and say, hey, we want to come down there on Saturday and produce something, and how much is it going to cost? And get an answer and give it back to the producer, that day, because again, that's the most important thing, is that people's time. So being able to, you want to, when you're looking for the locations, when you're looking for different opportunities, you want to put the ones at the top, that are going to be the easiest for you to produce on, the easiest for you to show, a result. And then you go from there. You're gonna, and at the end of that list is going to be someplace, that isn't very easy to get, and it's going to be far away, and it's going to be expensive. And just because it's at the end of the list, or just because it's all of those things, doesn't mean that you won't have to find it. So you're going to have to, at some point, you're going to actually have to drive 200 miles, or get on a plane, or do a lot of stuff that you wouldn't have thought that you'd end up doing to get the job done. But it's all fun, and people pay you to do it. So
That's amazing. And so talk about creatively, I love the collaboration. I think when I think about Location Scout and the director, I also find that location manager is part of the creative team of what I call solution oriented. And so the director might have something in their head, or it might be written a certain way. And sometimes the location manager is bringing us things in the creative team. We didn't even imagine it. It might be different than how it is in the script, but it might not just be more affordable, but be more creatively interesting. And I think there's a certain characteristic that good location managers all have, and that they have to all be really diplomatic and literally be people, but they also have to be able to speak firmly and speak the truth, despite knowing they're walking into people who maybe won't be happy with what they have to say. And I think that's a skill set that really good location managers all have. They can speak truth to power, and they can also be part of presenting things in a solution-oriented way instead of, no, you can't afford it. Can you talk about how you creatively look for solutions? And as every location manager I know, we're going to talk about location libraries. In that creative process, when you're doing your first breakdown, are you also evaluating the scene for, could this work in other places, and alternate theories to the crime and things like that? How do you approach that process?
When you're given the leeway to like you say, be solution oriented. Yes, you want to basically try to understand what it is, be able to communicate with the creators. Try to be able to understand what it is that they really want to convey. If there's uh, a line of dialogue that the actor, they want an actor to deliver, and it takes place in a car along a drive, and then as a location manager, well, if the car is moving, then these two actors can't be driving, so that this car is either going to be towed, um, which is like, always in the back is money. What are we thinking about? How much is this going to cost? I have to be able to tell my boss that what they asked for is going to cost thousands of dollars to produce what ends up being a few seconds in the film. At that point, the decision is up to the people who make the decisions, and usually, they end up. A very smart producer told me a long time ago that the easiest way to solve a creative solution, as far as producing a film, is with a pen or a typewriter, because at that point someone has to have a conversation and ask the producers or ask the writers, what can we do? How can these dialogue take place somewhere else? Can it be in the parking lot before they get in the car when we show them driving away? You know, or can it be a phone call? Do we need to? Can we shoot both sides of the phone call? Or like you said, we're not here to tell people no. We're here to tell you, to get it done for you. And as far as being able to speak truthfully, and be direct, and
Not intimidated.
that's my job. You hired me to take your flag to each and every little island, and and carve out a chunk so that you can produce your masterpiece. So I have to be excited, and I have to be willing to give people the elevator pitch for your film, just like it was mine, because if not, then I'm wasting everybody's time.
Super helpful. So let's talk a little bit about once you have some approvals. And so this is where I want to talk about the importance of photography to your job, and talk a little bit about location libraries. And then we'll talk about the next steps of clearing a location in LA. But we're going to give you guys some links, because no matter where you are in the world, there is a film commission that oversees this part of the relationship, and the rules and the laws and the permits. So talk a little bit about, first of all, okay, we found a location, everybody loves it, it looks like it could be in the budget. What's your next step here in LA County?
In LA County, the next step is to contact Film LA, or because you said LA County.
Well, let's talk about Southern California, because LA County doesn't cover places you think it would.
So the next step is you're going to want to contact the California Film Commission, because they cover beyond LA County and the rest of the state. And if they don't, then they're going to be able to tell you who does. And that's when you start reaching out to finding out, what are the other film commissions? Who are the other municipalities? Sometimes it isn't a film commission. Sometimes it's the city hall, and sometimes it's the city clerk. And you've got to figure it out. You have to be able to get all that information and have it, on a short, on a Rolodex, and be able to refer to it.
And thank goodness for the internet, which really transformed how you get to do your job. Because when we started, there was no internet. So this work was it was almost a detective job.
It has changed a whole lot. It was really fun back then, though. It was a lot of fun to look through maps and
Thomas guides.
Thomas guides and uh, what's the other books? To lug around books with maps in them, and yeah, you go down to the film library or to the location library and go through their photo albums. Um, yeah, it was a great experience. But yes, thank God for the internet.
So talk a little bit about if we are here in LA and LA County, we'll talk a little bit about how Burbank, Pasadena, Santa Monica are their own cities, West Hollywood. So they are a little, you have to maybe make sure where you want to shoot, who covers it, as you mentioned. And then the big kahuna is Film LA. If you're going to film in Southern California, it's normally the first stop. So can you talk a little bit about what Film LA is and what your job is in navigating the relationship with them?
So Film LA is a non-for-profit organization that exists solely to be a liaison between the creative community and the city county of Los Angeles as a film location, right? Their biggest job, their biggest responsibility is to convey to the producers that as people who have the privilege to produce content in these streets, you have a responsibility to the community, right? The filmmaker's responsibility is to basically leave a place better than it was.
Sometimes we use the word footprint.
So right, your whatever your footprint may be, your responsibility is to is you're basically asking. We're basically Film LA and the communities themselves basically ask filmmakers and producers to treat their locations, their communities as their own, right? Do it as you would at your house. Please pick up your trash. Please, please make sure that basically you understand that what you're doing, yes, it's a job, and yes, and there's lots of money involved, but at the end of the day, the thing that makes it specifically the responsibility of, especially in Los Angeles, is because our the city is filmed more than any, it's the capital of film and television. So if we're not going to hold ourselves to that standard, then why would anybody else? We're supposed to be setting the example, right? So when we go out in the streets and when we have all of our trucks, and we have to be respectful of the grandmother who lives on the corner. Sometimes that means that we have to ask a producer to write a check to that grandmother, or sometimes they don't want, sometimes our community is altruistic too. And sometimes we end up giving to charity just because we're out there, doing what we do. And there's times like that you really understand that, there's a reason for all of it. And we don't, sometimes we don't agree with, all of the rules and the regulations and stuff like that, but it's for a reason, it's very rare that you get the opportunity to help some, people by doing your job. So, that's probably one of the things that I appreciate most about this job.
I like to think of the location department. They're the key to everything, right? You're first on set, you're last on set, but even more so, you're responsible for the safety of our team and the safety of the residents that we are impacting when we land in a location. Can you talk a little bit about how you navigate when a production wants to do a certain thing and maybe it's not safe or it's going to negatively impact the neighbors? You're the person that's looking out for both, and you might mostly are the only person doing that, where production's about, I got to get my shot, I got to get it out, and you're the voice of reason saying, yes, but if we shoot all night and we have these big lights, peering into that person's house all night. Maybe we should put them in a hotel so they're comfortable. Like, you're looking out for both. And I find that to be a unique position as the location manager. That's part of the job that is just as critical. There are neighborhoods in LA that over the course of decades, because of production, are less excited about when production comes to town, mainly say Pasadena or La Brea and Third Detroit Street. They don't like production because they've been impacted so much by shows that location managers weren't able to represent the community equally with the show. So if you are thinking about becoming a location manager, can you tell us a little insight about how you grew, what skill set to be able to navigate both?
I thought a long time ago when I first kind of stepped on a film set, was that I wanted to be one of the people who could say that I've done pretty much everything, held every job on a set. I've never been a sound mixer, but I have been a boom operator. I've never been a makeup artist, but I have done wardrobe. But basically, I say that to say that if you have an appreciation or an understanding of people's jobs, because it is that the point of our jobs is to allow for all of these people to be able to do their jobs
Safely.
wherever we are, right? So if we're in an alley, in a bad neighborhood, if we're on a boat and it's at sea, all of these things are our responsibility. So whenever I can, we try to refer to Film LA to give us our guidelines to operate in the communities. But we're going to be able to reach out to people that are there to help us. If it's the police department, if it's the fire department, if it's the Coast Guard, if it's beaches and harbors. A lot of times, different scenarios require security companies out. Private security companies. Different. Once you kind of, like you said, once you kind of break down what's required for the script, then you have to be able to, let the producers know what's required in order to produce that script, right? So
What's required by the rules, regulations, and the law.
And safety,
Safety.
above and beyond, all of that is everybody's safety. So maybe you're in a place where the police department isn't going to be able to help you, and then you have to be able to assess, how we're gonna get done. It's not our job to say no; it's our job to kind of help understand it. And a lot of times it's a simple matter of dollars. If these things cost X, Y, and Z to produce it there, then maybe we need to look somewhere else.
I also love that you're almost like you're the ultimate planner. You're the party host, because as you're looking at a location that looks great on camera and it's going to be just as the writers imagine it in their head, you're also looking, because you do know all the departments and what they need. You literally have to figure out and do the math. It's like a circus coming to town. Where the tent's going to go? Who needs electricity? How much electricity? Like, you have unique knowledge that hair and makeup needs to maybe be on a different electrical line than the lights, and they need a different power. I mean, can you talk about, it's not just about what we see on screen, but where are you going to lunch people? How are you going to do that safely? And now with COVID, that's your responsibility as well, in terms of overseeing the medics and the COVID officers. Like, that's all under the location manager's purview. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It is all sort of under the umbrella of locations. And so because of that, that means that particularly in this current environment, that there's a lot of money being spent in a locations department. as the departments are required to provide all the things necessary to be able to produce in the current, um, pandemic. You like you mentioned, there's everyone that is producing, content in public is required to test all the employees. So a lot of times it has been recently, to something as simple as being able to refer a testing lab that will
Mm.
be able to accommodate the production, and then how once we arrive at the production, will the testing be facilitated? Where will it, and then, sometimes dealing with the ramifications of that, which is lines of people in people's communities where they may not want all of that stuff going on outside their door. So being able to have a reference for places where the activity is going to be welcomed or not, and being able to kind of, again, it's like you said, it's if we're the ultimate party or party planners, then we've got to know, we've got to have some, a lot of friends, and we've got to be able to call on somebody, at a moment's notice, and ask them to host 150 people, and and food, and uh restrooms, and trash bins, and all that kind of stuff, and for them to all be able to see that whatever you're getting paid is gonna make it worth it, or the opportunity to work, or have this producer work with you is gonna make it work it, or please, we've been friends forever, can you just do this for me? Sometimes.
Absolutely. I also think that people who are really, really good at this job um, think creatively out of the box. They don't panic. They stay. You have to be somebody that stays calm, because something's going to go wrong. Something's going to change at the last minute. No matter how you creatively thought this was the solution, it could change unbeknownst, and you just got to emotionally move on and go with it. You don't have time to stop and say, well, what happened was, or whose fault is it? You and I particularly have had under the gun and under the fire. And um, we had a situation where we were shooting downtown LA, and you had done all the right things. You had locked everything down. You had parking here, signs were up. We were shooting. You even changed the day we were shooting there to make it easier for production. And then everybody has to be on set on time. And anything that impacts even parking can throw a whole day up and cost thousands and thousands of dollars. And what we didn't know when we got to location is that the city had not notified that they were going to be doing street work in front of the garage where Ed, you had planned everybody to park. And by the time I got to set, you had already solved it. And people, so can you talk a little bit about, I think that's such a critical thing as people are thinking about, is this a role for me? That to me is one of the most powerful characteristics that I think make people really, really good at this job.
Well, panic doesn't solve anybody's problems, right? It's just pretty important. If is As producers look to you to be kind of not in charge of of all the aspects, but to have an understanding, right? When we're the difference between when you're shooting on a stage versus the difference between when you're shooting out in public on the streets is, or at a location, is that as a locations manager, you are responsible for everyone that's there. And so to be able to um, to be able to talk to them about uh, um, what, what's happening, or provide a solution. Again, you're not gonna solve anybody's problem by running around with your hair on fire. You probably, if a lot of good producers are like Kimberly, are gonna have uh, a contingency plan or a couple of options kind of lined up, which is I believe how we ended up, kind of navigating what the day that you're talking about. It didn't, it wasn't it just took a little bit of, we just kind of had to assess, what the problem was and see how we're going to solve it. And basically, I think if I recall, I think it was something as simple as changing the directions of our signs coming off the freeway, which, at 6 a.m. on a Saturday, is probably not the, it's just not the thing that you're expecting. I know now I remember what you're talking about. And yes, it was kind of, it did get my heart racing a little bit. But I think, I think me and a couple of our assistants and our security, team, we were able to kind of figure it out. And I think with maybe even the help of the fire department. And once you're in those situations, whenever you see a person who works for the city or is in a uniform and they're there for public safety, you got to lean on those folks.
Yeah.
It's and sometimes and a lot of times they tell you, if I have to be the bad guy for you to do your job, then that's okay. So we have enough, as long as they understand that I'm trying to do my job, which is to keep everybody safe, and to provide as little, bit of a nuisance as possible in public. And they're there to help us get our job done. We all work together. And so that's the thing is, it's a team effort, and you want to know what people do. And, at different situations, who to call and when to call them, and, and when to text them after midnight. And when, and
Like can wait till morning.
And when to wait till morning. Yes.
Critical. That relationship is so critical, and being a people person, because you're developing relationships with the critical people in the infrastructure of any town that you live in, that are the people that are most where the rest of the creative team doesn't necessarily have as collegial a relationship, right? They're seeing people who have making the rules are seen as the, barriers to my creativity. And yet, as a director or as the studio person, you're not thinking, if you don't do this right, this building could burn and die, and everybody could die, right? And you always have that gear on, so that I, as a producer, get to benefit because you've been working for 20 years and the people at Film LA know you and respect your work. When you call for the police, they help you because you've been respectful and responsible, as opposed to somebody who's always been part of breaking the rules. And that long-term relationship that you've nurtured over the years really becomes a huge asset for any production. So when you say something, I don't argue with you, I just listen. Like, you ultimately have saved lives and saved money and saved time. And good producers realize that that's critical in this job position.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I'm here for, is to help. So if I can save you money, if I can save you time, of course, by all
Even
means.
if I'm not realizing it at the time. Talk a little bit about the difference between the jobs are a little different. Your job between film and television. Now that you're back on a TV show again, it's a different job. And how do you work with your scouts a little bit differently? Do you still scout yourself on a TV show, or do you have to rely on a team of scouts? And then we'll talk a little bit about other ways that people can enter this department as scouts and as photographers and things like that.
I definitely do. I do most of the scouting, or I do a lot of scouting. It's, for me, just, personally, it's what I believe is my strength, is scouting. And I enjoy it. I really do. I really enjoy the opportunity to go out and explore. So whenever I have it,
for our audience to know, there are some people that work just as location scouts. They don't necessarily develop a career in managing. There are some managers that, as they grow their careers, don't scout as much anymore. So you can really figure out what you love, or you can do both, like Ed does.
Definitely, there are people who strictly, who are strictly location scouts or finders, and they're the people who, like, kind of like myself, who you just really enjoy what do you do? You know, you really enjoy the opportunity, and you're good at it, and people know you for doing.
Yeah, I find
You get to kind of be a niche person who maybe. I was just saying, sometimes you can find your own niche, you know, and it's you are in Montana and horse property in Montana, or or the Keys in South Florida, and you're the person to call when producers want to come to Hawaii and and make television shows, or that kind of thing, and it's just it's a lot of people, it's a lot of hard work, and producers giving you recommendations, and speaking kind words about your performance, and folks being able to depend on you for to do the job that they need you to do, and those people are very very fortunate, to be able to just kind of uh answer a phone call and go to work that day, or they're lucky enough to be able to not have to um answer the phone sometimes.
so. As we talk about the difference between film and television in terms of scouting and managing, um, just what make people great at scouting is they love to be in the car. It's a lot of driving around. They have to be really good at managing photos. They are a photographer. Um, and also you have to get down with a little bit of tech because you're taking tons of pictures, and there are different apps that people get familiar with in the way that producer or director want to look at the different images and managing, start building your own library. So as you are scouting, and like you said, you love to be part of that. That's the first step of the creative process of imagining what this thing I've read could be in on the screen. Can you talk a little bit about uh, how it's different in film than the process in television that's a little bit more all the time and tighter timelines?
um well, yes, definitely tighter timelines working in television. I'm just gonna so definitely it's always a matter of the timelines when you're dealing with television, because there's always something coming up next, right? When you're working on a film, usually this is the end all be all. This You're working for a company that was created solely to produce this movie, right? So whatever there is in the tank to produce this film, that's all there's going to be, right? When you're working for a television production, a lot of times you're working for a studio, who's kind of running things behind the scenes, even behind the scenes. Uh, so there may always be something else that's coming up, right? We've been scheduled to shoot 10 episodes, but we just got approved. I mean, I don't think this happens anymore. Or Kim, you could maybe speak more about it, but we just got approved to do 11 and 12,
Wow, they picked up 2 more episodes mid-season?
sure, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, amazing. That's great.
But uh or the second season, or we're gonna go back and reshoot scenes from episodes 3 and 4, and so
Yeah.
kind of uh all that kind of stuff is happening right while we're producing next week's episode. But we've also have it's kind of like when you're playing baseball, or when you're kind of uh at one of those things where you perform, you step into the mound, there's always something that's on deck, right? You've got something that's on deck, and you've got something that's waiting in the wings behind that, right? And all of that stuff is in various stages of preparation,
So you
right?
have to be working on episodes that are shooting 3 you have to know the whole season.
We've got to know the whole season, at least. Yeah, we do have to know the whole season, and what is the arc of this production, right? Because could end up that we're going to be back in the location that we started, week 1. So
Yeah, right. And TV changes so much. That's why TV, you have to be even more nurturing of relationships, because at any given time, a TV show might decide we got to go back to Meredith's house. And all of a sudden you are the person who's got to go back to that owner and navigate getting that show back onto that location. And if that location owner is not happy, that could make things really difficult for you.
That's right. We always want to make keep location owners happy. We want nothing. We want nothing more than to work with happy location owners, and to have them be to have nothing, but great things to say about our productions. And we just we you can't say enough how important that is. How to be able to have call it, I'd say, a network, but just you just want to be able to have people that you are in your corner because you've worked with them again and again, and they have nothing but good things to say.
So navigating, especially in television, when a location manager, a lot of the locations are maybe a stage where there's permanent sets that work all the time. There are some shows that are all locations, right? Like a True Detective or Succession. But Succession like literally took over huge buildings in New York and just owned them. And then there are lower budget shows that have to be way more creative with locations. And so can you talk about how much you're part of the process of figuring those things out in the script team and how that manifests in your day-to-day? Because like we said, you have an encyclopedic knowledge because you've been working for so long. And so you've been building your own library. We're going to start talking about location libraries. And so can you talk a little bit about how you process that need for a production that's got to have two footprints?
Being able to just I guess it has to do with being able to communicate with the creators again, all right, and being able to know how it is that we're gonna get this thing, we're gonna get the production done, and kind of want to say in reality, I'll say, versus what what you want or what the productions or creators expect coming in. I guess it comes back to, I hear myself talking again, uh, about managing expectations, right? It's you may have the idea, you may have a great idea about this production and where you're going to be able to take it and how you're going to be able to produce it, and you may have the theme kind of all picked and where it is in your head. However, doing the stuff in reality or in locations may not necessarily meet what you kind of had as far as initially what the idea is, but the name of the game is for us to be able to kind of to kind of help guide you to the end, right, of the mission. So if we can, I'm speaking hypothetically, if we can shoot at a place at the liquor store and it's not exactly the liquor store that you want, it, sometimes it's a matter of compromise, right? Sometimes we compromise what we want on a particular location so that we can really give you what you want on something that's really important, right? This location is central to the theme. Okay, so then that's the most important thing that I have to do, right? When when we meet, when you give me the script, it's the thing that I have to be able to kind of zero in on, and then be able to tell you, okay, we can make that happen, but at the expense of these other things. So sometimes when you gave the example of Billions or another show, when it looks like it's a certain way, like I know that those guys really they really took over all those buildings, but sometimes when it looks like these are really the mean streets of San Francisco, and and this is, and these are the hills and all this, and and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes what it is we've been able to do is kind of pull a fast one and think our way around how we're going to present that. So you know uh we we're consulted by the producers about how to be able to do this. We're gonna block shoot these episodes, right? We're gonna line all these episodes up and we're gonna shoot them all at this location. Then we're gonna go out and we're gonna shoot all the exteriors and match it, right? Can we do that? Sure, we could do that. Yeah, and that's kind of the money that you have, and we can kind of get on the
He should be coming back any second. We'll have him say it again. Eduardo, you're a little frozen. Okay, so you're back now?
Uh-oh.
Yep, I think you're back. So just say
Okay.
that last chunk again. We'll edit it in.
So we're talking about
You said the producers come to you and say, "Can we do it?" And then the next step is, "Okay, how do we do it?" And
right.
what-
How do we do it? What's in, well, the first thing we got to do is establish what is the most important element, location. What is the thing that this film absolutely has to have? If it's an airplane or if it's a ballroom, whatever it is, right? We have to be able to find that, or start with that, and then kind of make the rest of the movie happen around being able to secure that location, right?
Yeah.
So on the production that I worked with you, Kimberly, where we used we needed high-rise offices, and we needed streets, and we needed
Alleys.
and we needed a luxurious penthouse apartment.
With the city views of New York. And we were not New York.
But you would never be able to tell by
That's
looking
right.
at what we shot, because it was everything that was described.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was great working with you. Let's do it again.
Let's do it again. So let's talk about I think that there are a couple of different types of jobs that people who love locations can have. We've spent a good amount of time talking about location scouts, location managers, and some of the jobs that we navigate to get up to those department head jobs, which is key assistant location managers, starting as a scout, working your way up into managing. A lot of location managers over the years, or scouts, build up what's called a library, because you have all the photos and all the knowledge and the relationships of everywhere you've shot your whole career. And a lot of location scouts begin to put their own libraries up to become a resource for other scouts. And some people, as they grow their careers, end up managing these libraries or becoming a library house, as opposed to necessarily being a location manager for a production company. And so when you start to look around at the different location libraries, for instance, the one that California has, which is the state of California has its own photo library of every location in California. Can you talk a little bit about how people could potentially get an entry-level job working at a locations house? Also, another huge thing is a lot of big facilities that rent a space a lot have their own location person or their own location. So anything that's a public building, even if I want to film at LA County Library, there's a person I have to go to navigate that. So some people end up being a location person managing the properties. Can you talk about those career opportunities and how people could entry level into those kind of jobs and what they should think about that those jobs even exist?
Well, they definitely exist, and they're all great opportunities. For somebody who it's just kind of like you it's like working in sports, right? You just kind of want to be around the game, right? There's going to be more opportunities around the thing that you like, the more that you're around it, right? So So if you have an opportunity to, to work as a security guard in a locate, for a locations team, um, you're going to be able to have better opportunity to talk to the location manager than somebody who just sends a resume off the street, or off the internet, as it were.
Right. The
But
security is the number one most important relationship that locations, it's their partner at any location.
it's I mean, and it is it is a
Right.
great feeder for locations, because you have, you again, like, I can going back to sports, but you have to be able to identify or get good at, right, develop an understanding of one aspect, right, of the job. The boots on the ground part of the job is, locations is security. I mean, security guards, on a union production, most of the times the signs that are hung on the streets is done by security. The security
You
is
guys,
going
when
to,
you're driving around town and you see those yellow signs that have black arrows and cryptic names, those are normally the directions for film crew to find the official parking for that show.
and because your security guard has to know how to hang a sign, has to know how to hang it, and point it in the right direction, that leads to the parking lot or the base camp or the location itself. And then once there, that person, that guard, knows the location itself, right? They know probably the owner, because they've introduced themselves and they as the guard that's going to be there. And that's just, and then the first person that producers see or the location manager sees when they arrive at the location is going to be that security guard. And that security guard is going to, be there all day, and they're going to do their job and not, and if once they've done that and, kind of been known for doing that, and to say, has the time to pull the location manager aside and say, hey, what do I have to do to, kind of join locations? I'm interested. And that most location managers are going to say you're doing exactly what you have to do to join locations, because we want to be able to know that at some point, as a location manager, I have been that security guard at that gate, because when the security guard doesn't show up, it's my responsibility to have that guard there, right? So again, it's about knowing what people's jobs are, right? This person is literally doing my job for me, to be the first person at the location, to open up and greet, people, or not, or direct them to the proper parking space. They're all things that I am responsible for. So that person that's helping me do my job and helping me look good now is giving me an opportunity to repay them. So I'm going to help them create a resume and then tell them where they need to send it. And and like Kim said way back in the beginning of this, is sometimes those opportunities are the things that you don't see as opportunities. And it's just about being yourself, being helpful, being engaged, and just wanting to be around, or wanting to be, to learn something that ends up being. I mean, I just worked for look. Am I allowed to mention other location managers' names?
Absolutely.
So Brian Diaz
Yeah.
is the location manager of the show called Mayans, right?
On
For
FX,
FX.
which
Yeah,
is a
right.
spinoff of Sons of Anarchy, which we love.
So I just worked for Brian as a scout. I think back in January or February, for a couple of weeks.
That's a massive show with tons of locations.
A giant show, right?
Yeah.
And so Brian was a location manager. I'm sorry, he was what I am currently, a key scout or key assistant location manager a couple of years ago on another series that we worked with. I can't remember what it was. And before that, Brian was an assistant location manager on another series. And then before that, Brian was a security guard for a security company that we all hired, that we all use.
The vendor
Brian,
that a lot of location managers use on a lot of locations around town.
and this was, I want to say, not more than 5 years. maybe 6 years between the time that Brian asked me what did he need to do as a security guard to get involved to me working on the show where he got hired as an assistant, to me working with him again as on the as him hiring me to work for him. So and this is a guy who exemplifies everything that I've talked about as far as being in the right place at the right time and having the right attitude, and and expressing to people that this is what I want to do. I'm interested in doing that. Yes, please sign me up for all that stuff. And and he's doing a bang up job.
So I love that conversation. I think similar to what we talked about when we were discussing production design and art department. As you look at somebody's resume, you'll see people who were the keys of one department on one show, and then they might be an assistant location scout on another show because the location, there's a family, people, relationships are very important, and there's a fluidity. So which also helps extend the amount of weeks per year you could work and more job stability, because we are able to work. Everybody hires each other to work for each other, and that dynamic, and that's a really robust part of how this business works in this department.
Well, you definitely, it just helps to be able to, another, all I have are sports analogies. Another, to be able to stay on the field, right? You want to be able to do different things, even if you're a great, first base person, in a baseball, sometimes you need to be able to, to play the outfield, so that you can, so that you can stay on the field, so that you can, keep playing, so that we can keep working. So even though scouting is, my strength, sometimes somebody may need what's called a set sitter, which is somebody who just, you literally, show up to the location and, and wait for everyone to leave, for the rest of the production to come and film and go away. And that's not the most exciting part of the job. But in order to stay working, sometimes you do stuff that isn't all that exciting. But because you show up to work on time, and you're pleasant and you're helpful, you get other opportunities to do stuff that you like, for some of those people, or maybe people who know the people that you work for. So it all kind of just keeps coming back to recognizing that being able to take the opportunity to go to work every day, can lead to other things. It doesn't have to lead to other things. It can just lead to being able to pay your rent and your bills and that kind of stuff, and be able to give you the opportunity to to produce your own films, or to to get your acting reel together, or to go out and do your stand-up comedy in the evening. All these kinds of things are awesome forms of creativity, and to be able to to make a living around that kind of stuff, just kind of just keeps myself going, as far as I'm not just punching a clock. I am being creative, and it is keeping me around the thing that I love to do.
I love that. Such great tips and insight. Again, one of the first things I'm sure that you do, and people, when I'm first even thinking about locations, is I go to Google, or I go to the Creative Handbook. And we're going to give you the link to Creative Handbook, which is kind of one of the first places where all the different location libraries, scouts that have their own photo libraries. Many people, if you own a location, you own a home, you own a coffee shop that you want used for filming, you want to be able to make money renting out your location. a lot of these libraries allow you to sign up your own location, and they tell you how to take photos, or they'll come shoot your location. And many times, as I'm just imagining what a scene could be, I'm going to start visiting these locations even as I'm writing or breaking a script down. And so these also are places to find assistant work and find entry level places, because as the industry is starting to gear back up, as COVID starts to allow us to get back to work, a lot of these places are going to need to staff up again. And so starting with the location, the Creative Handbook list, and Eduardo, if you have other kind of first stops that you go to when you're imagining stuff that maybe isn't in your own photo library or beyond what you already know. We also want to encourage you, no matter where you live, there's so much production in the United States that is exploding with, like, look for the states that have new tax incentives, because that means all this production is going to get drawn to that area. So Minnesota, I just got back. They've just announced new tax incentives. So all this new production's coming to Minnesota, but very few people there have a lot of experience. And so there's opportunity there to grow. If you know Minnesota, or you have always wanted to be there, there are new parts of Minnesota that are now becoming film locations, and they need producers and scouts and all kind of experienced crew. And it's a great place to get, no matter where you live, somebody's probably filming commercials there. So even if there's not a lot of film and television, almost every major city has a advertising community, which means they're filming locally, which means they need a location scout in that area. So one of the first places to go to is locationmanagers.org, which is the International Locations Guild, which is a great first stop resource center. They have conventions, they have different resources, how to take good pictures, and just all kind of really great general knowledge for those of you who are thinking about how to get your first step into the door. Eduardo, where do you kind of go first? You know, kind of what's in your, do you let other people use your photo library? Do you have scouts that reach out to you? What do you think for those location scouts that really have built their business on being a library house, a locations house? What does being in that part of the business benefit those people? Can you talk a little insight about who decides to kind of focus more on being a resource?
Well, that's definitely a huge element of the industry is the resources that we use, right? The resources that are out there. And you mentioned the ones for the state and the county and different municipalities, but there are a lot of location professionals who kind of strike out on their own and basically provide what those companies do privately. And I mean, just kind of so myself as a location manager or a scout, if I'm able to work on a particular production for a few weeks or months, right, that's pretty good. And then if I want to keep working for the next producer and the next producer, I can do pretty well for myself. But as far as being able to duplicate myself in order to have more opportunities to make money, or to kind of grow my business or something like that, establishing a library of those locations and being able to be established as a resource for other location managers. Yes, I definitely do allow other location managers to use my photos in my libraries. Sometimes it's favor, and sometimes it's as as a business exchange. And so being able to do that, being able to to have more opportunities than just what are afforded to me by what I can do daily drive around in my car, that kind of makes that kind of either help lighten the load or help kind of open up another avenue within the industry, which is now being able to provide that resource, or being able to provide a location service or a website. So it's definitely, I don't want to say, well, it's definitely a goal for myself to be able to kind of exist, after I'm too old to walk around and
Be on set
knock
all
on
20
doors.
hours a day.
Yeah, and for a lot of people who've taken that route, it ends up being it can be a lot more lucrative for them. Um, yeah, it definitely can be a lot more lucrative, and it'll just be able to open up other avenues. I mean, you can definitely, as a company or a service or a website, you definitely are going to get more hits than a particular person,
Right.
right? Um, so being able to have a workflow that's presentable and shareable and all that kind of stuff is very important.
That's really great insight. I think as well, it's one of the things to think about if you're thinking about locations is you have to be the person that's thinking about a lot of the questions that nobody else wants to ask, right? So, Eduardo, we lost your picture a little bit. I don't know if you're having signal issues there, but I'll just keep rolling till you come back. Um, One of the things that's really important about locations is, again, the detective work. So, say you've got a relationship or a friend who is a dent, you need a dentist office, and you find a guy in a dental building that's got medicine and acupuncturists and dentists, and that dentist says, "Of course, you can film here. We'd love to have you." You have to remember to think about not only are you making a deal with the person that's leasing that property, but you as a location person is responsible to find out because the producer is not necessarily going to understand the difference or think about this, that there's probably a different owner of the building. And that person has to be negotiated and get the releases signed. There has to be somebody, location managers also have to have an understanding of contracts, negotiating contracts, getting contracts signed, and a little bit. You don't have to be a full lawyer, but you have to understand the terms and how to negotiate the agreements that are made. Can you talk a little bit about um, how you think about when you're going into a location? It's not just kind of what's at the face of the thing, but there could be layers and layers of stuff to figure out if it's even an option.
Yeah. So yes. So in the example that you use with the dentist office, we just want to be able to present something that's it's attainable, right? So if there are neighbors who aren't particularly
Neighbors.
interested in the production, or might make it difficult, and you know the building's in a high rise and you may not be able to, it may cost you more money to and labor to be able to run the cables up and down the high rise and all those kind of sort of things.
Yeah.
If all that stuff is a factor, then that helps to be able to to take it off the list of things, of possibilities. So we just want to be able to make, we want to be able, we want to give creators what they want, right? And we want it to be what they want visually and thematically. At the same time, the ability for the production to achieve what they want, what they have to to do. Sometimes it's a safety issue, sometimes it's a logistics, but it may make working in this particular location impossible, or or extremely difficult. And at that point, you just know, or you just know that you don't want to necessarily, it isn't worth it. So
And the
being able to
faster
make
you
that,
can get to that assessment, then you can know to not even show this location as a viable source so nobody falls in love with it. And we not wasting time thinking we can write to this location because ultimately you're going to find out it's not tenable. And so the faster you do that, the less time you're wasting spinning your wheels on something. So that's such a critical part of the job, I think.
sure, yes, for sure. We definitely have to be grounded. We I I love to be able to take the journey with creators and find exactly what they're looking for. But we have to be able to be grounded enough to say, you know, it it's not it isn't worth the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, right?
Yeah.
It's not it's not a good uh expenditure of the resources.
Yeah. And sometimes even when location is beautiful and perfect, sometimes the owner is not what I call production friendly. So it's the needs of the owner can sometimes outweigh something that's cost effective for us if we have to do a lot of extra for them that other locations maybe have owners that are easier to work with, might make it a different location, something we don't love as much, but still works for the scene. But we're going to have a better working dynamic, which costs time and money. I also love a location manager who also thinks about the neighbors, right? Because even if I have the film LA permit, even if I have my fire check done and my cops are outside, if the neighbor's kid starts playing rock and roll music, you're still wasting time having to stop, having to have the cops go to that place, having a dynamic of are all the location scout that thinks about going ahead and making sure the neighbors are groovy too, ends up saving us so much time and money.
Uh, it's part of knowing, where you're the surroundings, and sometimes it's just a matter of uh, making the right phone call, right? And in particular, some smaller places have, or even bigger places have. There's people who you call when you work in certain areas, right? When you work in Chinatown, there's a person there's a location professional that you call because because she's experienced in dealing with everyone who's involved in working in Chinatown. When you work in Monrovia or other places, there's different folks that you call or resources that you go to, and sometimes it's a matter of doing the research yourself and finding it, and other times it's just a matter of the locations themselves. There's a street on in Van Nuys that is actually the most filmed residential street in all of the United States. Uh, and each one of those, and one of the reasons why they're filmed so much is because the homeowners enjoy filming. They enjoy the benefits of having filming there. It's a pretty lucrative area. I can't imagine that those mortgages are cheap, so they're subsidizing themselves, while working with the filming community and being known as a street that is, welcoming to filming. And they're so welcoming to filming that when you walk down the streets, in each person's, door, there's a little card, and it gives you their daytime contact information to present, location opportunities to them. And you kind of, and that's and you don't think you think of it in terms of the location owner. Of course, they're going to put that number out there because locations are going to call them and they're going to offer them money, right? But they've done a huge service for me, because I don't have to now scout them out, for 12 hours just to get a phone number. I know immediately, who to call at every house on the block. It makes my job easier. We can negotiate, we can set our plans in motion. We can present our plans to to Film LA and get our permit in the works and and have all that stuff done, as a matter of, just they've saved it hours and hours and hours of valuable
Yeah.
production time.
It's such a great thing. And so for those of you who are joining us that are thinking about one of these aspects of a career in locations, these are really great things to think about in the day-to-day of what the job can be. And if you're good at puzzle solving, if you're great at being imaginative, and you're really good at talking to people, this is a great landscape for you. Being organized, I think, is really important, especially the magnitude of images that have to be navigated and staying organized when you have a creative team that could change their mind about things all the time. And so we think that that is really super important. One of the things as we start to land the plane here and wrap up soon is talking about how you hire people for your teams now that you're a key around town and you get what's of value to you when you're looking at somebody's resume. What are the credits that pop out at you? What do you respond to when you're meeting somebody for the first time and interviewing them? When you think about who you've hired in the past, how did they stand out to you? I'd like to talk a little bit about, as people who are watching us, Ed, are thinking about, could I be good at this? There's so much that goes into when we're building our teams. It's about who somebody is and their personality. Is this somebody I want to work with for 15 hours a day for 3 months? That to me just as valuable as how many shows they've worked on. Can you talk a little bit about how you approach staffing and how somebody could stand out to somebody like you? What's important that they need to present to you to get your attention?
So we talked a lot about, or actually we haven't talked a lot about one of the key elements of being, doing the job, being photography, right? Being someone who can take pictures. And one of the reasons why it hasn't
Good
come
pictures.
up. Good pictures. One of the reasons why it hasn't come up, at least I haven't brought it up, is because anybody can be taught how to take good pictures. It's the person who is going to be able to, to be part of the team, to kind of, to do the things that, to be part of the team that are necessary, that may not, it may not be the glamour detail. I have to be at the studio Monday morning at 7 a.m. not because of any other reason other than I drew the short straw, on our team, and because no one wants to do it, I'm gonna be there, and because I'm gonna be there at 7, that means I get to leave early. So sometimes it's just a matter of just kind of being what is needed in order to make the team kind of coalesce and and do what's necessary.
So when you are literally hiring for your assistant for a new show, what is it that you want to see on somebody's resume, or what is it that they could say or demonstrate in an interview that's going to let you know that there's somebody who can do those things you just mentioned, be part of the team, be solution oriented? How can somebody present themselves to you and stand out?
Well, punctuality is huge, right? In production, we like to say that if you're on time, you're not on time.
Already late.
Right? So being on time means being early. So
particularly for your department. Your department usually has to be on set an hour before the rest of us get there anyway to get it ready for us.
Oh, right. Yeah. If your location manager is late, you don't have much of a production. So you've got to, be able to be presentable, right? And be able to be able to
dress
engage
professionally. What that mean? Is that what you're meaning when you're looking for an assistant? They got to know how to present themselves.
I don't mean that you have to wear a collared shirt and long pants, right? When I say presentable, I just by exactly what it means to me, clean, and groomed.
No flip flops.
Right. Just kind of be ready for to do business, on it as a professional. Doesn't mean you can't wear a t-shirt, right? It just means that if you need a cup of coffee in you before you can talk to people, then have a cup of coffee before you show up. Until 3 o'clock in the morning the night before, because what we're not interested in hearing is about reasons why you didn't do, or you weren't where, or the different excuses. No one's in.
Say
And that's
say it
basically,
one more time, Eduardo. You glitched.
I said we are interested in people who are ready and willing to come to work and to learn, and that's pretty much all you need to be good at this. To have a long career in this industry. Be ready and willing to come to work, and be ready and willing to learn. That's it.
I love it. I think a lot of people start their first jobs um, and finding opportunities. Your first jobs are probably going to be non-union, and you are going to be looking for independent small feature films and short films. But if you live in Southern California, one of the benefits of being here is that there's so many great film schools with great graduate thesis departments. And many of these smaller budget shows or first time filmmakers don't have relationships and can't afford Eduardo. And so a lot of people don't think of of reaching out to shows that are just gearing up. Sometimes what I have people do is look at websites like Backstage West, or find casting notices. If you can find casting notices for student films or low budget independent features that are shooting in your area, that means it's a show that's getting ready to gear up. If they started casting, they've got some money in the bank and they're going to be filming. And so sometimes there's a contact information that you could reach out and say, hey, can you connect me to the producer or the line producer? Or is there a location department yet? And find out if they have a location department or somebody that's helping them out that you could volunteer to be an assistant for. I love that having a reliable car is somebody in locations. I need somebody who it's not an Uber job. You can't public transportation this job. So it is critical that you have I can't have somebody going out to Santa Clarita. I need pictures. I need them today. And their car keeps breaking down. That is something to think about as well. Anything else you could think of, Ed?
Um, to bring back the car point, you know, I mean, if I didn't say something, I would be remiss if I didn't say that I have actually done my job without a car.
That's great. That's great to hear. Tell me more.
It's a matter of I heard one producer say that I was tenacious. I mean, it's not a matter of tenacity. It's just a matter of being willing. Sometimes life happens. Sometimes things happen. Sometimes your car, as much as you would love for it to never happen, you break down, or heaven forbid, you run out of gas.
Yeah.
But there's things that that have to get done. That we can't. Again, we don't have excuses in the locations department. So I do know public transit system very well. I have worked on a number of productions where we actually were encouraged by the studio to use public transportation to scout locations. We were encouraged by one particular location to use to ride bicycles. And it didn't really go over that well in that particular production, but I have in the past because again, sometimes the best way to get from from one place to another is to get on your bicycle or to get on the train, and what we don't want to hear is that I didn't get the pictures because there was traffic, or I didn't,
right,
or my tire was flat, and some think there are emergencies and things happen, but again, on those days when those kind of things happen, you much rather be the person who got to work than who called and said that I can't make it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It really is a difference maker. Thanks for sharing that, because I wouldn't have thought about it that way, and I think it's important that everybody knows. It's great information. It's encouraging. As we think about other entry points, if you guys notice, the union that covers location professionals, it's also the same union as the Teamsters. And it makes a lot of sense because a huge part of the Teamsters is drivers, and they are the most essential part of production happening. They bring the trailers, they are making things safe, they're carting crew and cast from place to place. And so making the location and the drivers have to work in concert. So it so means a lot that these unions cover both departments because they're so integral. And so if people are coming from transpo jobs, if you were a professional driver and you want to transition into these, sometimes you can come through the transportation department because transportation is so involved in locations that some people in locations come from transpo. I think also of non-entertainment transitional jobs, which is people who really understand history. So much of production is research and archivists, people who really, there's so many period pieces. So people who know what the architecture is supposed to look like, what kind of signage, where the lamps. There's so much that works with production design. So if you're somebody who really knows and you're a specialist in a certain era or a certain geographical area, those people work so closely with locations or become a specialist that location people know they can reach out to. So that's an entry point. I think people who know real estate, seems like it's a no-brainer that locations could be for you. And you guys work with real estate people all the time in deals that we make, empty apartments or empty houses that will make a deal and cover a house that's been on the market. They love a little production coming in and offsetting some of those tax costs, right?
Yeah, we definitely make use of the real estate professionals. There are quite a few who are kind of known as the folks to call when you want to work in film and television. Usually it's commercials, and then sometimes it's just a matter of, do they still have the billboards on the bus benches with the realtors? Sometimes I used to call those guys.
Absolutely.
People and
see what they've got on their roster. Absolutely. Right. Real estate in your area, there's always going to be somebody who's got signs out, right? So if there's a certain realtor you see a lot in a certain region, right, that's going to be the same company or the same couple that's got their real estate group, they always are a first call. It's a really, and people who really understand the market here and market value could really transition the locations career.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm trying to think. I know a handful of managers who are brokers and real estate agents.
Really?
You definitely have your overlapping skills and
big time
areas of expertise.
They know photo management, they know the tech, they know how to use some of the new software, as well as they know the rules of a community, right? Does that community have an HOA? Does that transition into just knowing what films need and what TV need to put it on screen? So any final thoughts as we wrap this up? Or tips that you have for people who maybe are interested in checking this out?
One of the things that I didn't mention. Sorry about that.
Okay.
One of the things I didn't mention was the junior college that I attended, Santa Monica City College. When I was trying to figure out what I was going to do as far as school was going, I ended up at Santa Monica College, and it was because of my communications professor. She had been a reporter back in Ohio, who encouraged me to pursue broadcasting. I didn't, I hadn't really given it any thought. I kind of liked newspapers. And when I found out that I had to type, I think it was faster than 65 words a minute, it kind of eliminated me from newspaper reporting. So so I did pursue broadcasting because of her, and it was you know, I sought out opportunities where I could play sports and go into broadcasting, and it just kind of, you know, it just kind of happened that I got hurt and was able, you know, because of that, I was able to kind of focus on my you know, school and stuff like that, and I picked the right, you know, happened to be in the right place. Uh, uh, Encourage folks who are interested in any kind of, you know, especially something like this, and you need a sort of you know, like a background, or you know, you're trying to
Kind of take those first steps.
check out your local junior college and see what kind of programs they, you know, that they have, because there are definitely a resource, especially in California, are a huge resource, and that's where you're going to find a lot of your up and coming filmmakers. You
Yeah,
know, you want to be able to work with them too.
I love it. Thank you. That's such a great tip. And even if people who go to junior college want to take photography, or just general video production, it's a great first step to a career in locations. Eduardo, thank you for making the time to be here with us on a Saturday morning, and we really appreciate it. We can't wait to see the new show. Tell everybody again the name of it, and it's ABC, right?
It's ABC, and it is called Unprisoned,
And we will
um,
see it in the fall.
and it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I can't wait to be back on set with you again soon, I hope. And we want to thank everybody for joining us today. We're going to hand it back to Lyda. For those of you who have more questions, my DMs are open at Hollywood Shorts. Please say hello on Twitter or on Instagram. Happy to talk more about locations and your career in production. Thanks for having us, Lyda.
Thank you.
This has been so neat. And thank you so much, Eduardo. If you need any libraries, I happen to know of some great locations in my region, including one on Catalina Island. So I just had to put that in there. And thank you everyone to coming and joining us today. We hope you enjoyed everything that Kimberly and Eduardo shared with us today. It was such valuable information and gave really amazing insight. We're grateful that you could make it. For the participants, if you'd like to explore more about the topics we discussed today, we will be emailing out a list of resources and a link to the recording of the presentation to everyone who registered. We'd also love to hear what you thought about today's program. When this program ends, a web browser will open with a quick 5-question survey. If you all would be so kind to fill it out, your answers will help us improve future LA County Library programs. Like I mentioned, this is part of the series that is going on through June. Our last event for this session is June 4th, talking about hair and makeup artists, and I'm very excited about that one. Visit our website at lacountylibrary.org/creative careers to see the lineup we have coming up. The website also has recordings and resources for past events in this series. And if you're interested in participating in any of our other upcoming virtual programs, just visit our library website. So thank you all again. I'm putting the link to the Creative Careers website in the chat, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.